After all the trouble we've been through, you want to marry me?
Well, I'm sure we won't get into trouble on a weekly basis.
At 82, Stefanie Powers, who, together with Robert Wagner, once embodied the perfect couple in Heart to Heart, still retains her familiar grace and composure. For decades, she has avoided all questions about the scandal that tied Wagner's name to the phrase, the Catalina Mystery, referring to him only as an old friend who once understood me better than anyone else. Her silence led the public to believe that Stefanie chose to stay above the controversy, a quiet way of preserving the last trace of affection between two people who were once icons of the screen. However, in a recent exclusive interview with Variety, Stefanie Powers did something no one expected. She spoke candidly about the long-suppressed secrets hidden in Natalie Wood's autopsy report, hinting that certain details were deliberately overlooked. She even mentioned the vast fortune Wagner inherited after Natalie's death. Why, after nearly half a century, has Stefanie Powers finally decided to speak out? And how did Robert Wagner react when her revelations were made public? On Thanksgiving night in 1981, a thick fog blanketed the waters off Catalina Island, California. The sea was eerily still. Through the cold mist, the yacht Splendor glimmered faintly, the same yacht where Robert Wagner's star of Heart to Heart often hosted his luxurious getaways. But that night, only a few hours later, the vessel once associated with a refined gentleman would become the scene of one of Hollywood's most haunting mysteries. At dawn on November 29, 1981, the body of Natalie Wood, the celebrated actress of West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause, was found floating less than a kilometer from Avalon Harbor. She was wearing a red nightgown, a life jacket put on backward, and socks still on her feet. Her hair was wet and tangled with seaweed. The autopsy noted multiple bruises on her wrists, knees, and arms, but dismissed them as post-mortem injuries. In his private notes, Coroner Thomas Noguchi wrote a controversial line, "These injuries are not consistent with a natural fall." That statement never appeared in the official report. According to Robert Wagner, the night before Natalie and actor Christopher Walken, her co-star in Brainstorm, had dinner at Doug's Harbor Reef, a high-end seaside restaurant on Catalina. Wagner described it as a pleasant evening, but the staff recalled the atmosphere as tight as a wire. One waiter told the Los Angeles Times. He slammed his glass on the table, and Natalie just lowered her head in silence. A nearby diner confirmed overhearing Walken say, "You were born to act. Don't stop now, too," which Wagner replied coldly, "She should be home with her husband and kids." Around 10 p.m., the trio returned to the Splendor. According to the yacht's captain, Dennis Davern, the mood had changed. He later told 48 Hours CBS there were sounds of bottles breaking, shouting, and then total silence. Wagner reported Natalie missing at 1:30 a.m. But witnesses at the harbor said they had heard a woman screaming nearly 2 hours earlier. That discrepancy led investigators to suspect that Wagner delayed calling for help. Natalie's body was found hours later. Police ruled it an accidental drowning due to intoxication. But even within the investigation team, several details were suspiciously ignored. There were no tears in her life jacket, despite claims she struggled in the water. No fingernail residue was tested, even though there were scratches on her wrists. The dinghy she supposedly used to leave the yacht was found tied securely in place, showing no signs of use. Most notably, portions of the scene photographs went missing only to resurface in 2011. In the following years, the media kept raising questions. People magazine asked, why was her life jacket on backward? And why would someone terrified of water go out alone on a cold night? Journalist Dominic Dunn of Vanity Fair wrote, "I've seen people in pain, but I've never seen anyone suffer so carefully as Robert Wagner." The case seemed closed until 2011, when Captain Davern changed his story. He admitted that Wagner had truly lost his temper and stopped anyone from turning on the lights to search for Natalie. The case was reopened, and by 2018, Robert Wagner was officially listed as a person of interest. The revised investigation report stated cause of death undetermined. It seemed the matter would finally fade into history until Stefanie Powers, Wagner's longtime co-star from Heart to Heart, broke her silence. The two had shared a close bond since meeting on set in 1979, quickly becoming television's most in-sync duo. Stefanie once called Wagner her kindred spirit, the man who understood her timing and emotions better than anyone. After Natalie's death, Wagner sought comfort in Stefanie's friendship, and they remained close for years. However, in a recent interview with Variety, Stefanie revealed something unexpected. "I read the autopsy file in 2012, and parts of it were redacted. Some pages were removed from the public copy." She implied that the original version included additional notes about circular bruises around Natalie's wrists and deep abrasions near her ribs, details that vanished from the 1981 public report. Stefanie added someone didn't want the world to know Natalie struggled. They just wanted to believe she fell. That statement sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Several journalists, including Vanity Fair's Maureen Orth, confirmed that Stefanie's account matched the internal files they had once accessed. She also recalled that after the tragedy, Wagner was no longer the man I knew. During the final season of Heart to Heart, he became withdrawn and distracted, sometimes stopping mid-scene to stare blankly into space. Stefanie remembered, he lived as if carrying a shadow. "I don't think he ever truly slept again after that night." She did not accuse him directly, but her words reopened a door Hollywood had tried to keep closed. If even the woman who shared years of friendship and trust with Robert Wagner now insists that details were deliberately concealed, then perhaps the central question of this decades-old mystery, how did Natalie Wood die, has never really been answered. And from that very incident, Hollywood began to reflect on the real life behind the glamorous image of Robert Wagner, where love affairs, rumors, and half-truths started to come into clearer focus than ever before. In the mid-1950s, as Hollywood was entering its golden age, a rising face was being hailed across America as the aristocrat of the studio. That was Robert Wagner, who was then only in his early 20s. 20th Century Fox propelled him into stardom, touting him as the successor to Clark Gable, elegant masculine, and with a spawn that could make any woman sigh. Yet from that moment, his name became inseparably tied to a long string of romantic scandals still remembered to this day. Beverly Hills at the time was the land of endless parties. Wagner was a regular guest at the Beverly Hills Hotel, where reporters from the Los Angeles Examiner would wait in the lobby hoping to catch him. He was frequently seen accompanying Joan Collins, Debbie Reynolds, and even Elizabeth Taylor, each time with a different woman. But the relationship that truly set Hollywood ablaze was his affair with Barbara Stanwyck, the legendary star of Double Indemnity, who was 23 years his senior. They met while filming Titanic, 1953. At that point, Barbara was already a Hollywood icon, while Wagner was just a young actor struggling to prove himself. But the radiance of Stanwyck seemed to mesmerize him. Newspapers of the time couldn't stop speculating that the two were romantically involved. The Los Angeles Examiner even published a photo of them leaving the set together at midnight, with a caption written like a love story. The veteran star finds her second spring in the arms of a man 20 years younger. Years later, journalist Rex Reed revealed that Barbara once said, "He makes me feel young again. When I'm with him, I forget how old I am." That statement was as good as confirming the rumors were true. Yet the relationship faced fierce opposition, as Hollywood then was notoriously judgmental about age gap romances. Still, the two continued their secret affair for several years. That relationship with Barbara cast a long shadow when Wagner met Natalie Wood, an 18-year-old rising star of a new generation, America's beloved princess of the screen. At that time, Natalie was already an A-list name after the success of Rebel Without a Cause, while Wagner was trying to rebuild his career. They met at a Christmas party at director Nicholas Ray's house, and just a few months later, Wagner proposed. Their 1957 wedding at the Beverly Hills Hotel was broadcast live on ABC, a rare event at the time. Life magazine featured them on the cover with the headline, "Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner, America's Golden Couple." But behind the smiles, cracks in their marriage began to appear. Natalie was at the peak of her career, constantly offered new film roles, while Wagner struggled to find his footing. A close friend of Natalie's later told People magazine, she said Robert loved her, but he couldn't stand it when she was more successful than he was. On set, Natalie grew increasingly close to her co-stars, while rumors spread that Wagner often lost his temper. Reporters from The Hollywood Reporter once wrote that he had a habit of showing up unannounced on set whenever his wife worked with a male director or co-star. In 1961, rumors of an affair between Wagner and Swedish model Anita Ekberg, famous after La Dolce Vita, spread across the tabloids. While photos of them together in Palm Springs appeared in Confidential magazine captioned, "The Nordic Rose and the Married Man." A year later, Natalie filed for divorce. She simply wrote 2 words on the record, "Irreconcilable differences." No accusations, no drama, but everyone understood the real reason wasn't incompatibility. After their split, Wagner married actress Marion Marshall in 1963, and they had a daughter, Katie. But 6 years later, that marriage too ended. Then in 1972, at a party at Frank Sinatra's house in Malibu, Wagner met Natalie Wood again. The two danced to "The Way You Look Tonight," and it seemed as though all past mistakes were forgiven. Their remarriage shocked the media. Yet behind that seemingly fairy tale reunion were strange signs. Natalie once confided to her close friend, Mart Crowley, that she and Robert were trying to mend things through marriage counseling. Notes from Dr. Eugene Landy, who treated them in Beverly Hills, later leaked, showing that Natalie had expressed fear about her husband's sudden bursts of anger. That story remained little known until Stefanie Powers Wagner's co-star in Heart to Heart unexpectedly brought it up in a recent interview. She recalled that during filming, Wagner carried a kind of unpredictable energy, sometimes tender, sometimes transforming into someone completely different within seconds. Stefanie stated bluntly, "He was incredibly charming, but there was also a darkness in him that only the women who loved him could truly understand." These revelations led the public to re-examine Robert Wagner's love story from a new perspective. The man once praised as the embodiment of classic Hollywood romance was now seen as a dual figure, both magnetic and deeply conflicted. Vanity Fair once wrote a line that now sounds prophetic. Robert Wagner walks among beautiful women as if through mirrors, and in each mirror he sees a reflection of himself, dazzling yet distorted. From these scandalous affairs from Stanwyck to Natalie Wood, Wagner's image became increasingly complex, a man who could make women fall in love, yet also fear him. And when the tragedy on Catalina Island erupted in 1981, everything that had once been hidden within his past relationships suddenly resurfaced. From then on, Hollywood began to ask the question, was Natalie Wood's death merely an accident, or the tragic end of a love filled with too many secrets? That question led to the next chapter, a civil lawsuit that dragged on for years, once again thrusting the long-buried truth into the public eye. 40 years have passed, yet Natalie Wood's death remains an unhealed wound in Hollywood's memory. On the night of November 28, 1981, the waters off Catalina Island did not just claim a movie star. They gave rise to a mystery that has haunted American cinema for decades. Although police at the time ruled it an accidental drowning caused by intoxication, few people believed it, among them Lana Wood, Natalie's younger sister, who never accepted that explanation. Lana was more than just a sister. She had acted alongside Natalie, shared her secrets, and knew the darker corners of her marriage to Robert Wagner. In interviews on Dateline NBC, Inside Edition, and Good Morning America, she repeatedly asked the same question: why is everyone silent when the truth still lies at the bottom of the sea? In 2011, Lana Wood and yacht captain Dennis DeVerne, who had been aboard the Splendor on that fateful night, released a new statement. In it, DeVerne claimed he heard something heavy fall, a woman's scream, and then an eerie silence. He said Robert Wagner was enraged, throwing things, and stopped anyone from turning on the lights to search for her. The revelation hit Hollywood like a bomb. The Los Angeles Times ran the headline, "Lana Wood reopens the Catalina nightmare." The Hollywood Reporter called it the biggest crack in America's perfect husband image. Soon after, Lana hired a legal team led by Michael Aguirre and filed a civil lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court demanding that the entire case be reopened and that her sister's body be re-examined. The public erupted. Within days, major outlets, from Vanity Fair to Daily News, published photos of the yacht Splendor, accompanied by the haunting caption, "Was this really the site of an accident or the scene of a hidden truth?" In November 2011, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department officially announced the reopening of the investigation. The new report revealed several previously undisclosed details: circular bruises on Natalie's body consistent with fist marks, not a fall, And the most puzzling of all, her life jacket had been put on backward, something nearly impossible for a conscious person to do. In 2013, CBS's 48 Hours Mystery aired a special episode titled Death in Dark Water, revealing forensic images that showed abrasions around Natalie's wrists, suggesting someone may have tried to hold her back. The discovery shocked the American public. In an interview with The Guardian, Lana Wood spoke in a trembling voice, "I'm not seeking revenge. I just want to know what really happened to my sister. I want that man to answer." The entire nation shivered because everyone knew exactly whom she meant. By 2018, the Los Angeles police made headlines again when they officially listed Robert Wagner as a person of interest, someone potentially directly involved in the case. No charges were filed, but that phrase alone was enough to shatter Wagner's career once more. Vanity Fair journalist Maureen Orth wrote, Robert Wagner spent years playing the role of the grieving widower, but the ghost of Catalina has never let him go. Meanwhile, Wagner chose silence. He gave no interviews, offered no responses, and let his lawyer issue a brief statement. There is nothing new to say. That silence only deepened public suspicion. In cases like this, silence no longer feels like defense. It feels like confession without words. From then on, the public began to scrutinize every word and gesture Wagner had made since Natalie's death. Many recalled that during the filming of Heart to Heart, Stefanie Powers, his co-star and closest confidant at the time, had sensed a profound change in him. In an interview on CBS Sunday Morning, Stefanie said he would sit silently for hours between takes, his eyes empty. I used to think it was grief, but now looking back, maybe it was something deeper. She later admitted that during a shoot in Hawaii, Wagner had once confided to her, "Sometimes I can't sleep at night because I still hear the sound of water." That single sentence, remembered years later, sent chills down people's spines. The Wood family's civil lawsuit was not just a legal battle. It was a fight over memory between truth and the image Hollywood wanted to preserve. Lana Wood did not win in court, but she achieved something far greater. She forced the world to ask again, what really happened on the waters of Catalina? And from those reopened files, old wounds brought not only sorrow, but also stirred a quieter, more insidious conflict, one involving wealth inheritance and the hidden interests that followed Natalie Wood's death. That was when the dark side of the tragedy began to emerge, where money, fame, and trust were torn apart, along with secrets that had never been spoken aloud. Just days after Natalie Wood's body was discovered, Hollywood was shrouded in a rare, icy grief. On December 3rd, 1981, her funeral took place at Westwood Memorial Park in Los Angeles. Hundreds of stars, directors, and producers were in attendance. Frank Sinatra, Elizabeth Taylor, Rock, Hudson, Gene Kelly, all bowed their heads before the portrait of the woman once called the heart of Hollywood. The Los Angeles Times described the ceremony as so silent one could hear the muffled sobs between the relentless flashes of cameras. But even before the white wreaths had wilted quiet, questions began to circulate behind the scenes of the funeral. Who would manage Natalie Wood's estate? According to her 1978 will, her entire fortune, estimated at $3 million USD, including her North Beverly Drive residence, the Palm Springs retreat, and royalties from timeless classics like West Side Story and Rebel Without a Cause, was to be left to her two daughters, Natasha Gregson Wagner and Courtney Wagner. Robert Wagner, her widower, was named full guardian, a role both honorable and immensely powerful. For the first few months, everything seemed peaceful. Wagner was often seen with his daughters holding them close on red carpets during tributes to Natalie. Those images softened public grief. But barely half a year later, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner published a bombshell Wagner had sold the Palm Springs villa, the very place Natalie once called my safest haven, along with much of her jewelry and personal art collection. His stated reason to cover the costs of raising the children. The Wood family reacted immediately. Natalie's mother, Maria Zakharenko, and her sister Lana Wood said the move was too fast, too cold. In an interview with Entertainment Tonight, Lana remarked no one truly grieving would liquidate a loved one's belongings just months after their passing. That single statement shook the public more than any piece of evidence could. In the years that followed, Wagner tightened his control over the finances. Tax records from 1984 showed his name on nearly every commercial deal involving Natalie's image, from film re-release rights to marketing campaigns and the republication of her archived photos. Part of the initial profits had been assigned to the Natalie Wood Art Scholarship Fund, but the fund was dissolved just 2 years after her death. No one knew why, and Wagner never offered an explanation. In 1986, New York Daily News ran an investigative piece quoting a close friend of Natalie's. She once said that if anything ever happened to her, her mother would look after the children, not Robert. Though unverified, the report poured fuel on the fire. The public began to suspect that Wagner wasn't merely the legal beneficiary, but the sole one. Wagner remained silent, but his lawyer Fred Luskin spoke up. Everything is transparent under California law. Yet transparency on paper doesn't always mean transparency in the heart. Vanity Fair wrote a haunting line that many still remember. Robert Wagner is living too well in his grief. Indeed, just 2 years after Natalie's death, Wagner was seen driving a brand new silver Rolls-Royce to an event in Beverly Hills, accompanied by actress Jill St. John, who had once been Natalie's close friend. The sight stunned Hollywood. People magazine's September 1983 issue ran the headline, "The famous widower has found new comfort." A gentle phrase, but enough to set the nation buzzing. Many saw it as proof that Wagner had never truly grieved. But Stefanie Powers, his longtime heart-to-heart co-star, viewed it differently. In an interview with Closer Weekly, she recalled, "I once saw him alone in his trailer, staring into space as if speaking to someone. I asked, and he said quietly, 'I still hear her voice sometimes.'" Stefanie believed Wagner carried fear, not peace, and that the wealth that followed never made him happier. Yet she also admitted that after 1982, Wagner changed completely, withdrawn quiet, and never mentioning Natalie unless prompted. What made the case murkier was the rift between the two families. The Woods believed Wagner was treating Natalie's estate as his own, while Wagner's side claimed they refused to accept reality. The dispute never reached court, but the tension lingered for years. By the late 1980s, Wagner officially moved in with Jill St. John, marrying her in 1990. The public called it a new chapter for the man once dubbed Hollywood's widower, though some whispered that he was writing his next act upon someone else's pain. The matter of Natalie Wood's estate was never clarified in court, but it left a deep fracture between the two families. One side convinced that justice had never been served, the other insisting it was far too late to change anything. Amid the contracts, the sold mansions, and the untraceable funds, only one thing remains beyond all valuation: the truth. And perhaps that is why, when Robert Wagner published his memoir, Pieces of My Heart, in 2008, people were not only curious about the story he chose to tell, but also about what he would continue to hide. At the beginning of 2008, after nearly 30 years of silence, Robert Wagner suddenly reemerged before the media with a calm smile and eyes tinged with sadness. He did not choose to return through film, but through a safer, yet far more dangerous path: the written word. His memoir, Pieces of My Heart, published by HarperCollins, was introduced as a letter of apology to the past and to the people I loved. But to most of the public, it was nothing less than a public courtroom where Wagner served as his own defense attorney. Across more than 400 pages, Wagner revisited the golden age of Hollywood in the 1950s and 1960s, when he was the young star groomed by 20th Century Fox as the heir to Clark Gable. He wrote of youthful brilliance, fame, romance, and loneliness under the blinding lights of the studio. Yet what ignited the most controversy lay in the middle chapters, those devoted to Natalie Wood, the fateful love of his life. Over 70 pages were dedicated to Natalie, written with an air of wistful regret. Wagner described her as a flame that never went out, and called her death a tragic accident with no one to blame. He insisted there were no fights, no jealousy, only a fateful night at sea. But it was precisely that hazy version of events that infuriated the public, for everything he described contradicted witness statements and the 1981 investigation report. Captain Dennis Davern, the only surviving witness who was aboard the yacht Splendor that night, once told NBC that Wagner lost his temper through things and delayed the search. Yet in the memoir, Wagner portrayed Davern as a loyal man who did his best. The blatant contradiction prompted journalist Maureen Orth of Vanity Fair to remark Wagner tells the story as though he were the only victim of that tragedy. Even the Los Angeles Times headline was cold and cutting pieces of my heart, or pieces of her story, implying that Wagner was rewriting history in his own favor. But it wasn't just Natalie. Wagner also used the book to rewind his other notorious love affairs. He wrote of Barbara Stanwyck, 23 years his senior, with deep affection. She taught me how to live and love in a world that isn't kind. He recounted being captivated by Marilyn Monroe's gaze at a party in Chateau Marmont, and a fleeting romance with Joan Collins, which once led the press to coin the phrase Wagner's Web of Women. What upset the public wasn't whom he loved, but how he wrote about them. Natalie, according to Wagner, was sometimes too sensitive. Barbara was so lonely she couldn't refuse affection, and Joan was fiery but lacking depth. In his soft, reflective tone, he turned all of the women who had once defined his life into supporting characters in a story where he alone played the lead. Upon release, Pieces of My Heart instantly entered the New York Times Top 10 bestseller list. Wagner was invited to major talk shows, Larry King Live, The Today Show, and Oprah. Each time he spoke about that fateful night at sea, the audience fell silent. He would pause, lower his head, and say, "I'll never forget the last image of her." But to many, it wasn't raw grief. It was a performance, carefully staged. The most furious response came from Lana Wood, Natalie's younger sister. In an Access Hollywood interview, she said bluntly, "He wrote it to hide his guilt, not to tell the truth. That book is a way to erase my sister's memory." Lana believed Wagner deliberately released his memoir when most witnesses were elderly or deceased, shaping public memory before anyone could challenge him. 6 years later, in 2014, Wagner published a second memoir titled You Must Remember This. If the first book was a plea for vindication, the second felt more like a nostalgic stroll. He reminisced about parties with Cary Grant, filming days with Bette Davis dances, with Elizabeth Taylor, and Sophia Loren. Yet what stirred public outrage again were his vague revelations about past flings, including one with Audrey Hepburn, whom he called the woman who made me want to be a better man. No one could verify the story, but it was enough to land his name in headlines once more. Critic Janice Min of The Hollywood Reporter wrote, "Robert Wagner understands the media game. He doesn't need to prove the truth. He just needs to tell it well enough that people forget to ask." However, the most intriguing part came in a short chapter about Stefanie Powers, his longtime heart-to-heart co-star. Wagner called her the most beautiful soul I've ever met. Yet few expected that Stefanie, once regarded as his closest confidant, would eventually break her silence, revealing an entirely different side of the Hollywood gentleman. In a 2024 interview with Daily Mail, Stefanie revealed Robert had two selves. One was the charming, witty man everyone adored. The other was a lonely soul, always hiding something. She recalled how, during filming, Wagner would often sit silently for hours on set, gazing into the distance before suddenly laughing, as if to mask something deep inside. He never spoke directly about Natalie, she said, but whenever someone mentioned her, he'd look down as if seeing something only he could see. Stefanie also revealed that when Pieces of My Heart was released, Wagner had sent her a copy with a note that read, "This is my truth." But she never fully believed it. "He writes beautifully," she said, "but I can feel there are chapters missing, the ones he didn't want anyone to read." Her words reignited the storm. Because this time, it wasn't a critic or an accuser speaking, but someone who had known, understood, and defended Wagner for years. By the end of You Must Remember This, Wagner still offered no answers to the lingering questions. Each line he wrote seemed like a veil, concealing the truth, while ensuring that all eyes remained on him. Afterward, he withdrew from Hollywood, settling in Aspen, Colorado, with Jill St. John far from the cameras and the lights. But memories never sleep. Even in his 90s, whenever Robert Wagner's name resurfaces, the public remembers two things: a tragic love story on Catalina Island and the two contradictory books he left behind. Now, as Stefanie Powers, at age 82, finally speaks out, Hollywood holds its breath once again. For she is not just the woman who once stood beside Wagner on screen, but the one who saw the man behind the mask of the perfect gentleman. And perhaps her story is the final piece in the puzzle the world has spent decades trying to complete. If you find this story fascinating and want to hear more untold secrets of Hollywood, a place where glamour always walks hand in hand with silence and hidden truths, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment below. What do you think about what Stefanie Powers has revealed? Could it be the long-buried truth finally coming to light, or just the late recollection of someone who was too close to the story? Share your thoughts. Who knows, maybe you'll notice something Hollywood has been trying to hide for more than 40 years.